very good morning to you. This is Friday. We're in the middle of the month, August. I'm Andy Johnson. Good morning. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for staying with us here at WESN. This is AM Prime. This is what's going to happen over the next hour and a half or so. We're talking with Mr. Leroy George. He's a representative of the NGO in Tobago called the Tobago Civil Net. We've asked him and he's agreed to give his perspective, or his organization's perspective, on what transpired last week with the attempt to oust people from their residences in those areas around the expansion area for the A&R Robinson Airport in Tobago, and people have resisted that. We'll get his views on that, what's it on the ground there, how they've moved in the past week to address that issue, the people in Tobago, the people in the Crown Point area in particular. We're also talking with the mayor of Arima, His Worship, Mr. Kagni Casimir. Of course, yesterday, remember, we had two of the councillors in the Arima Borough Corporation talking about their plans for Christmas, a big sort of parang festival they're having to help mark that, the 134th anniversary of the declaration of Arima as a borough. Also, we talked with Mr. Derek Richardson. Remember, we began a discussion last Friday, and we said we'll continue it, about what he calls the culture of a disenchantment being experienced and being lived by representatives of the normally call them the security guards, but they are the estate police officers who work in the private sector, hired by private sector people to provide security services to a range of agencies and organizations in the country. The question of their overtime, how their days are constructed, what they get paid for after working some hours. In their case, he says that they don't get overtime pay unless they work 12 hours a day. They have to buy their own uniforms. They have to turn them back in when they leave it, some parts of the equipment and uniform when they leave the job. And those are just some of it. That's just the tip of the iceberg. So we're talking with him. We're continuing that discussion and the appeals for assistance in addressing those issues, working conditions of people who provide that service, sort of ancillary and supplementary to the regular police in parts of the country where security is important. We also take a look around the region. We'll tell you what those subs are. I can tell you Jamaica and Barbados and Guyana if we get the chance to do that. So those things and more on the program. Stay with us here.
Welcome to the American University of Barbados School of Medicine. We offer 2 comprehensive MD programs, 5.5-year program for high school finishers, and 4-year program for college graduates.
The American University of Barbados has been accredited with the Barbados Accreditation Council, BAC, and has been accredited
by CAMHP.
As the medical school has affiliate hospitals at Baltimore and Chicago in the USA and the Caribbean islands.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
There's a taste in the air everywhere. Feel the vibe cause it's something to share. Smooth, rich and creamy, you'll find it right here. Makes you smile, relax a while, it's fun and good cheer. Ooh, enjoy every scoop. Ooh, every taste will get you hooked. We have flavors that you love, a combination special. Come along, enjoy your treats. This is Uncle Pete's.
Get ready for an explosion of music an August evening at La Jolla Auditorium, featuring Leandra, Tricanal, David Baru and Marva, Nathaniel, and from Tobago, John Arnold and Lynette Lewis. August 20th, $250. La Jolla Auditorium from 6 p.m. For more info, call 747-4289 or 262-2584.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces Flagship Mac Bean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Get ready for an explosion of music an August evening at La Jolla Auditorium, featuring Leandra, Tricanal, David Baru and Marva, Nathaniel, and from Tobago, John Arnold and Lynette Lewis. August 20th, $250. La Jolla Auditorium from 6 p.m. For more info, call 747-4289 or 262-2584.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in-depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the content capital.
People get confused, they go into the grocery and they're like, you know what, I want to change my life and I want to eat better. As exciting as the front of a label looks, the back of the label is really where it's at. If something has less than 5% in that particular serving of that nutrient, then it's probably a low source. If it has 20 or more, then it's a high source.
Smoothies, I'm not really into that because the texture, or I don't like what people put in there. But the good thing about a smoothie is that you can make it your own. You can literally put whatever you want. If you really like bananas, you can put bananas. If you really don't like bananas, don't put bananas. Like, it's really that simple.
What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
All right, welcome back to the program. You remember yesterday we had these two representatives of the Arima Borough Corporation, two of the councillors in different districts in what is called the Royal Chartered Borough. We're continuing that discussion this morning with the Mayor, His Worship Cagney Casimir. The 134th anniversary of the declaration of that neighborhood in Trinidad and Tobago as a borough. And they're having festivities to mark that, Arima Borough Fest. And we talked about a lot yesterday about the parang shows taking place on that hill. That is, if you should try and get up there one of these days and see how it is to look at things around you from there. And Arima is a hilly borough, and one of those councillors says that she represents the part of the borough in which they are the most and the highest hills. We with the mayor this morning to continue that discussion. Cagney Casimir, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Johnson, and good morning to the viewers and listenership of WSN.
All right, so tell us what you bring to these arrangements for what is going to be, what is promised to be an interesting period.
Well, in celebration of the 134th anniversary of the Royal Chartered Borough, and in celebration of the 60th anniversary of independence, we have a number of activities that we have completed, and we have some more activities which are to be serviced to the burgesses of the borough. As you were told yesterday, we have, of course, tonight the Parang, and tomorrow, please God, we have our health fair, and next day we have our gospel night. We still have coming on the following weekend, we have, of course, our food fair, and then we have our civic ceremony, and we have an appreciation day. And hopefully, we'll have some fireworks. And I say hopefully because...
what does that depend on?
That depends on funding. We haven't had any funding for fireworks, so we are waiting to see if we will get a last-minute reprieve for fireworks. But then that works both ways, because there are some who say that fireworks is a danger, and the others who enjoy it.
Yeah. So it's not about permission to have it. The question is financing to
The question is financing. Actually, we have already done our approaches to the EMA and all our requirements for the clearance, and we have gotten that.
Yeah, so those things are met, what the requirements to have it.
Yes, the requirements are met, yes. They are met.
So where are you all on there's this debate about if we're going to have fireworks, what kind of fireworks it should be, what kinds of things are sent up in the air, the question of noise pollution and all of that. To what extent you all have addressed some of those things?
Well, you know, where we are having it is in the velodrome.
Yeah.
Not in the velodrome per se, but just outside the velodrome, so it's a very safe area. But again, the aspect of noise or no noise is a matter of cost. The cost for us for 25 minutes is $126,000.
$126,000 for 25 minutes?
25 minutes of fireworks. So you see how costly it is in terms of producing that event. We had thought originally that what we'll do is invite the burgesses who have fireworks to come to the safe place and to, of course, celebrate the 60th anniversary.
Yeah, because in fact there are people who buy their stuff and for New Year's Eve night, we call Old Year's night and so on. You see that, and people. And
if you were there at the last fireworks, which I think was 2018, we had quite a large number of people that came out for that fireworks, and at that time it was $78,000.
Yeah, and that's just a couple of years ago.
That's just a couple of years ago. So you see the cost that has splurged on us in terms of $50,000 more.
So are there people in the business community in the borough who sell them, and so you're talking with them about being able to probably make that a donation to the activities?
Well, we have. I'm very proud of the business community in Arima. They have stepped up for us in this Borough Day. They have, of course, funding the supplements that we had both in the Guardian and the Newsday, and the supplement with regards to the first people. We are also having another supplement for the first people on the 28th, which is when they have the Feast of Santa Rosa. So on that time, the business community will also have to step up. They've also stepped up in terms of funding some of our events, and so we're still waiting some of the funding from some of our other sponsors.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about a couple of the things you say that are still being finalized.
Which is the civic ceremony.
Yes.
So civic ceremony this year, we gave a Lifetime Achievement Award to, of course, Phil Simmons, and we did that at the cricket match in the Oval. Yeah,
Phil Simmons, the cricketer, as opposed to the former radio man and so on.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And the coach of the West Indies, yes. Yeah. And we also have to do a Lifetime Achievement Award to Professor Belle Antoine, an Arimian. She is now the principal of UWI St. Augustine.
Yeah.
And we have a number of other personalities we want to give a Lifetime Achievement Award. So we have 2 awards this year that we are planning. One in the Malabar Phase 4 community, where we're going to do 15 awardees for significant contribution, and another at the Rima Community Center, which is going to be another 15 contributions for excellence.
Yeah. So that occasion in Malabar Phase 4, the occasion will be held there, not that
it will be held
people
there.
Who will be honored are from Malabar Phase 4.
But it will be held there. As I said, there are 2 categories,
right.
Significant contribution and excellence. So we make sure that we award those who have contributed to the borough over the last 3 years, because the last time we did this award was 2018, given the pandemic. So
how do you separate significant contributions from excellence?
Okay, so that the Lifetime Excellence Award, you have 2 exemplars. You have Phil Simmons and Professor Belle Antoine.
Right.
For those other awardees, those who are in the various categories of culture, sports, public service, and education. So those who have contributed to the Royal Chartered Borough in those areas, yes. And there are people who would have done 30 years in education, public service, the cultural events. We want to do a significant contribution to people like Mr. Power from Melodians, and he has done a lot at Memphis. And of course, Memphis, the Melodians, Pantent, they will be given a Lifetime Achievement Award. So that's how we separated.
Yeah, there's something in me that says that if I'm talking to people, with people about ARIMA, I have to put a plug for my lifetime friend and comrade and co-traveler in this business, former Mayor Ashton Ford. He continues to hammer home a point which he says that for its significance in, at least in the local government structure in this country, and the prominence about ARIMA being a Royal Chartered Borough, he doesn't feel that the borough and the district gets the kind of attention that it deserves from the authorities nationally. And he continues to talk about the fact that you talk about Phil Simmons as a stellar cricketer. There have been many other people in various other aspects of sport and community development and education and so on. And he thinks the borough doesn't get its just due from others in authority in addressing some of those things. And the neglect of ARIMA is sort of his hobby horse for the last several years. How do you respond to some of that?
Well, we talk about neglect of ARIMA, but let me identify some things in ARIMA that we have as strengths. Our diversity is one of our strengths. So, you know, we have the First Peoples, we have the Oshun, and their festival starts on Monday. We also have the pan sides. We have the number of pan sides we have our drummers. And then we have a good financial base in ARIMA. So these are some of the strengths in ARIMA. Of course, the financial base includes banks and credit unions. We have all the major banks, including JMMB. We have a number of credit unions. We have over 8 credit unions operating in ARIMA. And then we have, of course, as I said earlier, 17 steel bands. So ARIMA has we still have our original police station. We have a new police station. We have, of course, the new ARIMA hospital. So that is some of the base that ARIMA have. But we need to do some things, and I agree with you. So we need to do the refurbishment of the velodrome. But I want to talk to some of the projects that we have coming up. Because we talk about the neglect of ARIMA, right? Yeah. So we have, through the MP of Dabri-Omera, continuing the work of the former MP, the Larry Gomes Stadium, which is going to be refurbished. We also have the pool at the India Grounds, which is also going to be built. I know that that is in the tendering process. So too is the Larry Gomes Stadium in the tendering process. So there are a number of other stadiums within Trinidad and Tobago. So that's in the Dabadi area. In the ARIMA area, we of course are now pursuing our administrative complex. It's going to be at the old BK hardware. So you will see something in the budget in terms of putting an allocation towards the administrative complex. Then we have the MP of ARIMA, apart from the administrative complex, dealing with Connect ARIMA. So what we intend to do, we have had several visits with the Ministry of Digital Transformation, IDB, UDECOT, Ministry of Housing. We've had 2 site visits along Hollis Avenue, where we're going to do ARIMA Connect. We're going to do several internet poles, wireless poles, that is going to provide that connectivity for ARIMA. And we're going to be using the market, the new concept of the market. So in the market, we're going to provide goods and services. So we're going to do an access center in the market, which will allow people to come in to do end-to-end services through the Ministry of Digital Transformation. And
so that is where the market is currently located?
Currently, yes. Yeah. So we're going to convert part of the market. Yes. We already have the funding for it, so we're going to be doing that, and we hope to finish it by probably the end of October. Put the access center there. Ministry of Digital Transformation will outfit the center, and they will also put 2 members of staff to assist people coming in to do the end-to-end services. Apart from that, the ARIMA Community Center is also going to be outfitted to do an access center for our students, and also the Malabar Phase 4, which is going to be a little bigger. The access center there is going to house part of the library, so we have a library service there, and you also have an access center there. So these are some of the developments that we know are on the plans for ARIMA and will be developed soon. And of course the access center, well, the access center is already approved by Cabinet Minute. So I know that will be funded and that will be done. As I say, the borough is going to build out that first access center. We're going to provide the infrastructure, and the Ministry of Digital Transformation is going to provide the computers and the staff to run the center.
Yeah, I mean, there are people, I mean, I've been living sort of administratively speaking on the outskirts of the borough itself.
You are in the borough, you are in the electoral district of Arima Mero West.
Well, right. But, which is one of the points. Parts of Arima are split up among 3 constituencies. You have Dabadi, Omera, which, on that side, you have Lopino Bona West, which I think is where I have to vote, and then you have up the road. To what extent that is a challenge in terms of how you manage things in what then is local government-wise Arima?
Well, I have access to 3 ministers, the Minister of Public Utilities, the Minister of Planning and Development, and the Ministry of Education. So that combination there gives us a real boost towards and we also have the Minister of Housing and Development who lives in Arima.
Right, exactly.
So that gives us the access to the ministers and to some of the resources that we need to push the borough forward.
Yeah, the Minister of Housing and the Minister of Planning.
Yes. So it doesn't provide us with much of a challenge in terms of trying to access these services and getting the plans done. So we know where we are and we know where we want to be, and that's what we're pursuing. I know that we're going to be doing the Omera Road and the Tumpuna Road. The Ministry of Works has assured us they will do those 2 projects for us. So the access into the town is going to be well paved. I hope within the next financial year.
Yeah, I want to take a note of something. Some time ago, in a different forum, I had spoken with he was a member of parliament for, I think he was the mayor of Arima, Gassan Youssef, and
yes.
he was talking about some of the challenges. Particularly with business in Arima, and he had talked about the fact that, which is evident, and I'm trying to see it from a positive position in terms of allowing space and allowing as well space for people to operate. He was lamenting the fact that on the main streets in Arima, what is now Lord Kitchener Avenue.
Yes.
It's crowded on big business days, it's on high business days like today and tomorrow. So it's crowded with, you can't get a space in front of any of these stores because it's all taken up with people doing the street trade. While I see it as a means of affording people a means of deriving their own livelihood and expanding the small business, some people complain about it, the hazards and the hassles with all of that going on. So there are people who know where their parking spot is and who demand this is their parking spot on a Friday and a Saturday because that's how they do their hustle. It's a difficult thing to balance, I would say. I'm trying to get your view on managing that.
Okay, so that's one view. The other view is that it encourages entrepreneurship. So recently we had a fair at one of the Massey's compound, and we had an overwhelming response to that fair, where we had a lot of our local entrepreneurs bring local manufactured products, and of course the response was also very, very good from Arima. So that tells us that within Arima we have the entrepreneurship, and the small businesses that are along the street, we are hoping that they will develop. And they will develop in terms of moving back into businesses and rented premises. But you know, with the pandemic, we do expect that very soon because people know recovering. Yeah. And yes, people have a sense of ownership. Propriety in Arima. And it's hard to break because these are Arimans who live all their lives there and they are accustomed to certain services being given from the streets. So it's hard to stop it, but what we have done is we are trying to regulate it through the vendor policy. So we intend to license those vendors, but we license them once they have permission from the businesses to sell in their areas. So once the businesses give the permission, they will be licensed and they will be given the permission to sell in those areas. But right now, through the municipal police, we are trying to curtail it somewhat. Yeah. What we're doing in the market, however, is we're going to, in the market, try to put some of our local entrepreneurs inside there, those who would have done local manufactured products. That's why I say the concept of the market is going to change. It's going to be more of a goods services concept, embracing not only agricultural products, but also local manufactured products. The plan to the back of the market, which is in Udicott's hands. Yeah, when you go to the back of the market, well, you know, we have an open market and an uncovered market, right? A covered and uncovered. The uncovered market is where we plan to do a complex. Now, the design plans are in the hands of Udicott. So once Udicott produces those plans, then we'll be able to go back to the vendors and say, these are the plans for the uncovered part of the market. It's going to be a green complex, which will not only house the entrepreneurs that are in the market and the local entrepreneurs, but those businesses that span outside FCB and the craft vendors that are within the market area next to the basketball court. So that whole complex will take the entrepreneurs there. We'll also provide for concessionaires, and we'll also provide for some offices of the corporation.
Yeah, there's a sense that, to the extent that I'm there during the week, so those booths that are set up, on the other side of the parking lot from the bus terminus, it doesn't seem as though they are used to the extent that it was intended.
Glad you raised that. So by the end of this month, you'll see the booths being relocated and redeployed within the electoral districts to provide areas for those who would have applied for the booths within the electoral districts for their use. We're going to convert that whole area into a food caravan area, hospitality area. We're going to enhance it by putting a small little park in front of the amphitheater, and by doing some solar lighting in the area and maybe some fencing. To the back of that area, we also have a 40-foot container that contains restrooms. Yes. And then we have the restrooms by the bus lay-by. And then we have the car park there. And we have the beautiful Princess Royal Park, where we think people will love to sit and eat and look at what's happening in the park, and maybe some football and some cricket.
Certainly, because there's a sort of there's a need for it, and there's a clientele for it now. And I suppose it is one of the things that celebrates the city itself, because REMA has now become, well, probably that's a return to what may have happened in previous times. That is a significant gathering center for the new people in the community, a lot of whom are Venezuelan nationals who've had to run from their situation, and they gather along that strip there.
That's part of the diversity of REMA. You talk about La Casita and the migrants and the Venezuelans that come in. It adds to the diversity of REMA, but it's a throwback from years ago when they did migrate. And we had a significant population of Venezuelan migrants in REMA. Now, the concept of changing that whole ambience in REMA is also supported by what we are doing in our parks. We have applied for over $700,000 to upgrade our parks, 25 parks, to do solar lighting, benches, swings, upgrades of the basketball courts within the parks. We have assistance in our food fair. Our health fair by U.S. Embassy through USAID and UNICEF. Yeah. But they're also assisting us in doing some covering on the benches with regards to some COVID information. So we're going to do that in our parks also. And within our communities, we're also doing some community gardening. So in Rosewood and in Ganaski, that is in Tumpuna, we have two large community gardens there. The one in Rosewood, we have already reaped 3 times and provided to the residents pak choy, lettuce, tomatoes, because there we're doing rainwater harvesting, we're doing composting, we're doing some of the new hydroponics we're going to be doing to show people how to do the gardening in communities and in their own homes as a form of sustenance. So we're going back to that. Those are some of the projects we engage in, the next 1,000 tree projects. We have planting fruit trees in some of our parks and some of open spaces, and also some indigenous trees.
Well, that's lots of things to be hoped for. It's a lot of hope in what you say, Mr. Mayor. And we will see your intention then is to try and stay as long as it's possible to see this through. So you're going to stay another term when your term ends?
That's not up to me.
Well, right, but I mean, you're hoping that happens.
It's up to the leadership to do that. But while I'm there, I'm doing the best that I can, and I'm making sure that we could change REMA. On Monday, please God, part of the festivities in FCB through the manager Remy. We're having, of course, the coming together of the diversity. We have a virtual display of the First Peoples. We have some prayer by the Oshun. We'll have our Mocha Jummies. We'll have our drummers from Jonestown. That is the diversity of REMA that we want to promote, and the community spirit that comes from different parts of the borough to bring together in one place. It's fantastic in terms of diversity.
It sounds like a happy story, a confluence of things taking place. Our best wishes to you that you succeed to the extent that it is possible.
So we're not going to have another 20 minutes?
I wish we could probably look at what happens afterwards, maybe talk about that. But Mr. Mayor, thank you very much, Mayor Cagney Casimir, the Mayor of REMA, the 134th anniversary of the declaration of that district as a royal borough. Stay with us, we're coming back. When we come back, Mr. Leroy George and the situation with the attempt to oust people from their lands and their properties in Tobago. What's been the response to that? Where we at this morning? Stay with us. This is AM Prime.
Tickets are at dbesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices. Like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher-Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola.
Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive. It is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole. It's for all of us in public.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN, Content Capital.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andre.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
All right, welcome back to the program. This is the Friday morning edition, AM Prime. Let's tell you what's happening now. Well, we'll come in a moment to a discussion with Mr. Leroy George. He's a representative of the NGO grouping known as the Tobago Civil Net, and we've asked him to, and he's agreed to weigh in on the situation regarding the attempts at eviction of people living around areas which are being claimed by the state for part of the expansion of the ANR Robinson International Airport there to make way for roadways and the rest of it. We'll get to that in a moment, but first let's take a look at the numbers for COVID-19 in our midst, and then we look at the Newsday question and responses. Let's look at the numbers now, what they are, where they are this morning. 7,051, the total active positive cases. 19 deaths reported between the 12th and the 18th of the month. New positive cases, 1,948, and the total number of deaths from COVID-19 thus far, 4,089. So those are the figures over the last week or so, between then and now. So the Newsday question and the responses, and the question was, do you still think it is safe to take or send your children to public recreational spaces? What are your responses? Let's go through them. No, the authorities would have you believe that COVID is the problem, but the truth is it is crime. That's one response. The other, we all know where we live, so safety is a perception. Nowhere is safe. I'm not sure what TBH is. So those are the responses to the question. Do you think it's still safe to take or send your children to public recreational spaces? With us now, Mr. Leroy George. He's a representative, as we said, of the Tobago, the group of organizations in the NGO sector called the Tobago Civil Net. What do they think? What do they make of? And how do they respond to what has been happening, the attempts by representatives of the state, of the company doing the work for expansion and better roads in the area leading to the expansion of the A&R Robinson International Airport. Mr. George, good morning. Thanks for joining us for this discussion. Where do you come into the matter?
Good morning. Well, first and foremost, what should be noted is that presently this airport expansion program, the whole operation, should be done according to the fifth schedule of Act 40 by 1996. That's the part of the Constitution that deals with the Tobago House of Assembly. It should be done by the Tobago House of Assembly. However, the authority over seaports and airports that is given by the fifth schedule, some of that has been usurped by the central government.
You said some of it has been what? Has been sort of
usurped by central government.
Mm-hmm. So they've retained that or reclaimed it?
Not usurped. Not retained, usurped. Because naturally, according to the Constitution, according to the fifth schedule of Act 40 of 1996, the THA Act, any airport or seaport construction in Tobago is to be done by the Tobago House of Assembly. And of course, the Tobago House of Assembly answers to the people of Tobago more directly. However, the authority was usurped from the Tobago House of Assembly. You have central government dealing with it directly. And from the very onset, for a very long time now, there has been some arguments or a lack of, not communication, but agreement, a lack of agreement from the Crown Point residents that are being relocated.
So you think that explains, you think that is exemplified by the fact that, I don't have it in front of me and I can't remember the exact wording of it out of my head, but the Minister of Works responded to the THA Chief Secretary by saying that you don't have the authority to call that shot in common parlance. That is an issue that we're talking about. That's an illustration of what you're talking about here.
Yes, that does fall into place there. What you're speaking specifically about is that an injunction was made by the residents or some of the residents in the Crown Point area to stop the demolishing of one of the homes there that was supposed to happen last week, a couple days ago. And the Tobago House of Assembly would have issued a letter stating that, or indicating or insinuating rather, that that injunction would have led to a situation where the Commissioner of Lands, etc., would have held back from allowing that demolition to happen. And so the letter which you are speaking about came from the Minister of Finance, and while the Minister of Finance is sole corporate, really and truly he has no real say in any of this that is going on. Really and truly, it's in the hands of the Minister who is in charge of lands and settlement right now. And all of this is a big mess. I've really got to state it one more time. This really was supposed to, according to the Constitution, be done by the Tobago House of Assembly. I can't overemphasize that. And so they were stating that the Tobago House of Assembly does not have any authority over the Commissioner of Lands. And so that is part of the bigger mess. But the real crux of the matter is, according to Act 40 of 1996, the fifth schedule, this entire airport expansion program was supposed to be done by the Tobago House of Assembly, and there has not been given any excuse, any reason why, contrary to the Constitution, that authority has been usurped from the Tobago House of Assembly by central government. And now we're seeing a big mess because the place that they relocated many of the residents to, it's on Shilvan Road. But just off Shilvan Road, there's no electricity there, there's no running water there, etc. And so obviously these people are trying to rebuild their homes with what was already insufficient compensation for their properties, etc. And they're trying to build it without electricity. So now you have to rent a generator and all of that. So it's a real hellish situation. And some of the residents did settle, even though I have not heard of anybody that was 100% satisfied with their situation. But some of the residents did not settle. And so there is a lot of intense animosity, right, and indignation in Tobago towards how these residents are being treated.
Now, what does the organization make of the fact that some people say when a decision has been taken that whatever premises and property are declared necessary for a public purpose, there's little to nothing that people who may stand in the way can do eventually? How do you respond to that?
Well, if you look at the law as it pertains to compulsory acquisition, you could see that there are instances, especially when the issue is compensation, where one party is saying we're not being sufficiently compensated, which these issues have to be dealt with by the judiciary according to the law. And of course, that's what's happening with those residents that are standing up for themselves and saying, listen, you're going to have to deal with us a little better than how you're trying to deal with us here. And so on the 26th, one judgment is going to be made, and we're really hoping that the right thing happens. But it's in the hands of the judiciary to a large extent at this point. However, I should point out, and I'm going to be really upset with myself if I don't point out, that former Chief Secretary Hochoy Charles, he would have had a similar situation when the Claude Noel Main Road was being built, where persons felt as though they were inadequately being compensated by central government, and an injunction was made not by the residents, but by the Tobago House of Assembly, and as a result, they were able to bring about some relief to these people. And I personally am hoping that that happens in this case, whereby the THA actually applies for an injunction in order to hold back this situation.
Yeah, as you remind us of that, I think I remember there was a lot of heat around that, the construction of the highway, because the late great Dana Robinson was accused of being more than obstreperous, because I think he had advised people that they should lie down in the tracks of the bulldozers and the tractors and so on, and he was not that was not looked at kindly. But then the fact that there was an agreement for the construction to go on, that was to the satisfaction of the opponents at the time, right? That's the point.
That is the point. And also THA intervention is the point also. THA intervention took place in that case, right? And I also am acquainted with that story where there were accusations that Dana Robinson had asked the people, or suggested to the people, that maybe they need to lie down in the road and physically put themselves in the way of the machinery, etc. I don't know if that situation was actually true or not. Hochoy Charles did insinuate that that wasn't a true, that accusation was not well placed. However, that's not important. The important thing is that there was THA intervention in terms of an injunction. And in this case, where it comes to the Crown Point residents, that injunction would have to be made based on the fact that really and truly, it is very contrary to the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago. It is very contrary to Act 40 of 1996 that central government is doing this in the first place, because I could tell you, I believe that if it was the Tobago House of Assembly, because the Tobago House of Assembly answers to the people of Tobago in whole and not in part, as in the case of the central government, that the compensation issue would have not been as dire as it is right now, that things probably would have been a little bit more fair.
So you think the Minister of Finance is not correct when he tries to rein in the Chief Secretary by saying, well, you don't get to call the shot on this. What we say overrides what you think.
He's highly out of order. And yes, there is something, and they would point out this. There is something called Section 75. I think it's 75.1 or 75.2, which states that whilst the THA has responsibilities over certain things, if those responsibilities or if that authority that the Tobago House of Assembly has is overriding some authority that, according to proper legislation or according to the findings of the Cabinet of Central Government, if it's overriding that, then Central Government basically has the say to say, you know what, we're stepping in and no matter what the Constitution says, because the part of the Constitution that covers the Tobago House of Assembly, it isn't even entrenched in the Constitution, etc. But that particular scenario would require that a formal announcement or finding or passing in Parliament will have to happen in order to be able to call on that Section 75, and I'm not certain that has happened. So I think what Mr. Hocha Charles would have insinuated is absolutely correct. An injunction needs to be called by the Tobago House of Assembly, not by the residents, based on the fact that, legally speaking, this airport is not to be built by central government, but by the Tobago House of Assembly.
I wonder how you respond to the Newsday did a poll on that issue, which appeared in the paper yesterday. I just want to read to you and quote the responses to that, or the response to that from one Keith Lookloy. He said, well, let them not negotiate now. One way or the other, they have to move because they're standing in the way of progress. How do you respond to that?
I strongly disagree to that. And if progress is Crown Point residents, and Crown Point, for anybody who's ever been to Crown Point is the area in Tobago where at any time during the day or night you have access to goods and services. If progress is taking persons out of that situation into a situation where there is no running water, there is no electricity, etc., and inadequate compensation is happening, if that is that person's or any person's definition of progress, I must say that progress is something that needs to be stood in the way of, if that is their definition. This seems like the opposite of progress. This seems very counter to progress to me, personally.
Yeah, well, I was there between Sunday and Wednesday, and I agree totally with what you say about the nature of life in Crown Point, in the Crown Point area now, because it's almost an area that never sleeps.
Exactly, St. James of Tobago, yeah, definitely.
So, how do you
you can't even get transport.
Yeah. What do you make of, to what extent that may have been egregious in and of itself, and to some people insulting, that some of the optics that we've seen from this, with Chinese people going into people's homes and properties in that area and moving out with people's belongings, Chinese people?
Well, the optics was, in my opinion, a blessing in disguise, because it could have been Black or East Indian persons, in which case indignation would not have been as high as it was. However, imagine, I could tell you from my perspective, I was actually doing another interview for Tobago Civil Net when I found out that they were going to demolish the people's home. I found it out while doing the interview, or just before doing the interview. I was doing that interview with Tobago Updates, and I went down there because there's so much to this thing, and I'm well acquainted with a lot of the bits and parts, etc. And long story short, the Crown Point residents are completely in the right, and the central government is completely in the wrong where this is concerned. So I went down there to lend some support, and when I saw the Chinese people going into the homes of Black Tobagonians, taking out their stuff, and not just taking out their stuff, but putting it on the side of the road, right? And knowing to myself that the legality of the situation was, well, I'm being diplomatic to say anything other than it's illegal. And knowing to myself that the fact that it's inconsistent with the Constitution, yeah, that is probably the most diplomatic way for me to word it. I became very, very irate, and everyone became very irate, and that's when it became a situation where all the people of Tobago basically was like, no, this is not something in the direction that we would like to see things going. And I just want to also point out that this is not a situation that may be unique only to Tobago or to Trinidad and Tobago. There was an incident in Sri Lanka recently, I don't know if you know about this, which part a seaport would have been built with money that was taken from a loan, right, from a Chinese company.
Yes.
And then that seaport, the Sri Lankan government, because they were going through some financial difficulties, they weren't able to pay back that loan. And as a result, the Chinese government took ownership, or not ownership, but they have leased that airport for 99 years. So for 99 years, they basically own that seaport, not airport. And they very recently brought a ship into that area, which the government of India, which is Sri Lanka's nearest neighbor, is very, very concerned about, because they believe that ship to be a threat to national security. It's basically a spy ship, right? It connects satellites up in space to that particular ship so they could pay attention to things going on in India, southern India, where there are nuclear plants, etc., very intricately, etc. And the Sri Lankan government can do nothing about it. And personally, that is one of my concerns, right? That's one of my concerns, why I would have liked to see the law abided by in this case, why I would have liked to see the Tobago House of Assembly in charge, because I cannot overemphasize the fact that the Tobago House of Assembly answers to the people of Tobago in whole, while just to put it in perspective, central government, when you have a general election, only 2 seats come from Tobago out of 41 seats. They could do Tobago wrong and get away with it. THA cannot do Tobago wrong and get away with it, at least not beyond a 4-year term.
So when Mr.
Why the Constitution is written as it is, Act 40 of 1996 fifth schedule, which puts airports and seaports in the hands of the people of Tobago indirectly.
All right, Mr. George, thank you very much for helping us weigh in on this situation. It's one we will continue to watch and see where it goes, how it ends. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for having us.
All right, we're moving up to 7 o'clock. We will take a break for the news. On the other side of this, Derek Richardson, who heads the organization of the Estate Police Association in Trinidad and Tobago. We began the discussion last Friday in which he was saying that his members are living under a state of disenchantment, a culture of disenchantment, given the arrangements under which they have to work. We continue that discussion on the other side of this break. Stay with us. This is AM Prime on this Friday morning.
Here is your WESN News on the Hour. I am Marky Sakers. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Prime Minister and Guyana President bilateral talks focus on agriculture. Prime Minister discusses regional energy security with regional partners. Tobago Carnival Committee says planning on track for October Carnival. Now for the details. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says bilateral talks with the Guyana President focus on agriculture, among other things.
Through this agricultural forum that we're trying to stimulate interest is what we have been doing. They're all tied up together. And the question is, do we have what it takes to do what needs to be done to have an outcome to protect us from a future that is very uncertain with respect to what goes into our stomachs, what goes on our plates, what is in our shops, and what is in our markets.
Guyana President Ali says that they also intend to address the issue of access to fresh water in the region. He explained that there is also ongoing work on trade and tourism between Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago.
What we are working on between Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago in relation to food security is combining our efforts, combining our policy making environment and framework, combining our commitment to removing the barriers, combining our access to technology and use of technology, combining our educational system, our research and development system into one integrated whole in advancing the food production plan of Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana.
The Prime Minister also advised on what was decided on the issue of regional energy security.
We took a decision this morning that our technical people in energy, both from Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago and Suriname incidentally, would meet or continue to meet, but meet specifically, and by the end of September will produce for us a document with recommendations to be considered by these three governments in the context of our collaboration with the United States on this whole issue of regional energy security.
Ritual Rivalry release, that's Tobago Carnival's 2022 theme. As the event was officially launched on Wednesday, Misha Trim, the chairman of the Tobago Carnival Committee, has acknowledged the anxiety felt by stakeholders as they awaited details of the celebration to be released. Ms. Trim notes the committee were given a timeline and were mandated to launch by August 17th. She says there was a process to follow, which saw final approval coming from Executive Council.
I think what was not made quite clear and created a lot of noise and unease in the space is the fact that the committee which I chair is a planning committee charged with conceptualizing and passing those plans over to the Executive Council for approval. And so that is a point where we were at, and persons were waiting, but we had to also wait on our approvals because that is just a process. And the process did give us a bit of anxiety, but we're here. We were given a mandate to have the launch in August 17th, and this is what happened yesterday.
Ms. Trim further informed that her committee's work in terms of planning and policy is now over.
The committee is providing oversight. The arms that are going now to execute this carnival falls under the ambit of the Division of Tourism and their agencies, which is the Tobago Festival Commission Limited and the Tobago Tourism Agency Limited with their marketing capabilities. So this committee has done its work. It's going to provide oversight and support, and then in November is when our term is actually up. We will present a report based on all our findings, all of our interactions, all of the research to inform what worked, what didn't work, and what we recommend as a process moving forward.
Well, that's News to the Hour on WESN. I am Marky Sekas. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome to the American University of Barbados School of Medicine. We offer 2 comprehensive MD programs, 5.5-year program for high school finishers, and 4-year program for college graduates.
The American University of Barbados has been accredited with the Barbados Accreditation Council, BAC, and has been accredited by CAMHP. As the medical school has affiliate hospitals at Baltimore and Chicago in the USA and the Caribbean islands.
Welcome back to the program. We'll get to our next guest, Mr. Derek Richardson, President of the Estate Police Association in Trinidad and Tobago. We'll continue the discussion we began last week, in which he's contending that his members are suffering from a culture of disenchantment. We talked about the work arrangements, when they get paid for working overtime, how many hours they have to work before overtime kicks in, the fact that they have to buy their uniforms, and that's just the beginning. We get to that in a moment, but let's just take a quick look at what is happening around the region. In some cases, in this corner, we go to Grenada for a report from the national report. The city government is set to assist families affected by a recent sort of house fires in the constituency of St. Mark, in the parish of St. Mark. Let's take a look at that.
2 houses were gutted in St. David, while 3 were destroyed in St. Mark and 4 others partially damaged. Minister for Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, Honorable Philip Telesford, and Minister for Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation, Honorable Andy Williams, visited the affected families on Tuesday. Minister Telesford told GIS in addition to tangible support, psychosocial support will also be given to members who have been left traumatized by the fire.
After that report is given, we could start processing any kind of assistance to these 2 gentlemen. We are indeed very saddened, having learned of the fire, of the losses. We will indeed send our officers very soon to do a proper assessment. We also learned that there is a 3-year-old daughter involved, and so we would want to ensure that she's properly protected. I understand that she's being sent off to her mom, so at least she can take a look at that. We do not know, after the assessment would be completed, maybe some measure of counseling might have to be given, because one of the gentlemen said that he's very depressed, and we can see it just in his disposition. So the psychosocial aspect, of course, we would have to give attention to that.
Minister Williams said they will work with the Ministry of Social Development to mobilize and work to expedite the rebuilding process for the affected families.
A fire is something that is never easy, to face. And what we're going to do, as Mr. Telesford just said, that we are going to wait on the police report. And as soon as we get the report, right, and once it's not arson, then we are going to ensure that we mobilize our crew quickly, to start the rebuilding process, because we know it's a hard thing for someone to lose a home and to lose all their belongings. And together with social development, we will ensure that these individuals, the victims, are comforted in whatever way that we can do within our powers. So you can rest assured that we, as a government, will move swiftly to help bring back the situation back to normal for them.
2 brothers, Dylan and Isaiah Paul, are now left to depend on the support of their community and family to get through this difficult period. Although they have lost all their belongings, they are thankful to God for sparing their lives.
Around 10 o'clock, I see the fire start from up in the roof. Then I start to see some flames coming out from the roof, and pieces of things like when plastic pitching off. Then the room started to catch a fire, pitches of glass from the lower started to pitch. So I didn't have a choice. It's only to do. I come through so much I didn't know what to do. And the only thing I could say is the only thing I could just drop down. That's the only thing I could say. And the only thing I could say, I take a grab my little daughter, all my clothes, bun, my TV, my stove, my microwave, fridge, all my child school uniform, bun, everything. I got nothing right now. And the only thing I could say right now, I'm so sorry whatever happened, but I'm still alive.
Well, I feel depressed, I feel down. Not that I had nice like money saving in my house there, to do my house on top there. I'm like a shock shots I put up there. Well, them things just gone, But holding faith.
Authorities are on the ground trying to determine the cause of Monday night's fires. Members of the Royal Grenada Police Force, National Disaster Management Agency, and government officials were on site at both locations to conduct assessments.
All right, so here and now, we continue our discussion with Mr. Derek Richardson, President of the Estate Police Association. We told you we began this discussion last week, and we were talking about what he's put out in the media. As he says, his members are suffering from what he called a culture of disenchantment with terms and conditions of work. We went through some of that. The fact that they have to work for 12 hours before they can begin to clock overtime. They have to buy their uniforms, a lot of other kinds of restrictions. He says that his organization has written to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Labour, drawing these things to the attention. Not much uptake from that just yet. Mr. Richardson, good morning. Thanks for coming back.
Good morning, Andy. Thanks for having me back. For the opportunity to continue this important discussion.
All right, so can you take it up from where you wish, given where we broke off last week?
Okay. I think, well, we were discussing the fact that the estate police, the security industry, as I said, is a 12-hour industry. It's the only one that we know of, as I said, that which has a 12-hour workday. So unless you have an agreement with the association for an 8-hour workday, then it's 12 hours. And because of the low wages, you find that these officers, especially in the private security industry, those employed by private security companies, they look for hours. So they work 12, 24, 36, 48, and in excess of 48 on many occasions, in an effort to get some money on the table to take care of their families. But there are no overtime payments attached to that in the main. Very few companies pay any overtime whatsoever.
No, wait a second. You mean sometimes people work for spells of 48 hours?
Yeah, 4 days straight, 5 days straight, trying to make money. Yeah, that is common, and at straight time.
Yeah.
At straight time. So they come into work today, and they don't go back home until 4 days, 3 days, as the case may be.
Yeah, you say, but in some cases you have members who have contracts with the employers, so that there's some cases in which these things are negotiated, but not.
Yeah, well, you're working in one of the companies that has an agreement with the association.
Yes.
For 8-hour workday, right? Then your day work is 8 hours. 4 hours after that, anything after that is time and a half, and then double time, right? That's because you have an agreement.
Yes.
But in the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, because of the sectoral order, and because of certain judgments, dictate that it's 12 hours. So, and even after 12 hours, when overtime is supposed to accrue, the companies are not paying that. Of course, the companies are complaining that the clients who employ the company doesn't pay enough, and that the issue of overtime cannot be entertained, and all of that. Now, I want to go to something here which we have been bringing out to the public.
Yes.
And really and truly is the issue of how these contracts are being bid, how the bids for these contracts goes, and the effect of those bids. They have brought down the price of an estate constable security officer to actually nearly nil. What happens? You find that the state is the largest employer of estate police and security officers, right? And when they are bidding for these contracts, previously these contracts would have bid probably $40 for estate constable, and have the other add-ons in that, because you have to pay NIS, holidays, this and that, right? Those are the things. But we recognize now that the bids are only $20 per area. And we brought it out that at a state company, that being TSCT, there was a bid process. And that bid process is really an auction whereby people competed live against one another for the contract. And Amalgamated Security won that bid. That bid was for $24 per hour, okay? But in Amalgamated, an estate constable, right, gets $20 per hour. And to carry the firearm, he gets $5 per hour for that. But yet, Amalgamated won with a bid of $24. Subsequent to that, we put it out to people, we raised alarms, we asked the other companies how this could happen. There's no laws really to compel anybody that they cannot do that. And so what is happening now is that the price that companies will pay now for private, for security, is so low that basically only one company will be able to sustain that kind of rate. And we are asking, is it an attempt to monopolize the entire industry and bring the rates down where nobody can survive?
Yeah, you say the state is the largest employer of services of people in security. How that stacks up with the existence of this state enterprise called MTS, the Maintenance, Training and Security Company. So they can't provide the safety and security needs that the state has. I mean, they're a state company.
Yes. Well, MTS being state-owned has a majority of contracts in the state, schools and the ministries and all of that. And we've been asking the question, why haven't MTS been more utilized? Now, the thing about that is MTS, as a state company, is also paying minimum wage, right? The state company is also paying minimum wage. The state company does not have a pension plan nor a health plan for the officers. So there are issues in MTS which we have been trying to get the government to address via negotiations, the start of negotiations, because we understand that this is the only state company which pays minimum wage, the only state company which does not have a health plan, which does not have a medical pension plan in place. So even for the state company to go into to take up all the other state contracts, there are serious issues in an MTS which we have been trying to get the ministry and the company to start the negotiations at least at an MTS, so we can improve the terms and conditions, get a health plan in, a contributory health plan in, get a contributory pension plan in, so that these officers who are employed by the state could employ the same terms and conditions, or closely the same terms and conditions of other state enterprises.
So isn't this somehow philosophically wrong? It is upside down. It is. It is highly irregular.
It has been left to happen for far too long. If the state controls what MTS pays, right? What they pay to MTS, and the state is saying now that they will only pay minimum wage, and you have two designation of classification of officers there. You have the estate constable, who has the higher authority, who has the authority under the law, and you have the security officer. And at present, the estate constables and the security officers at MTS are working for the same $17.50 per hour. And we have written and we have controlled and pleaded for them to enter into negotiations. And of course, the management is saying that they are awaiting directions from the chief personnel officer to make an offer on cost items. So you are waiting, as everybody else, waiting, and nothing is happening. And officers are very agitated, they are very discomforted, demotivated, right? And of course, they are calling on the association to do something. But like all other unions which are in Bigo, you have the situation where, because the CPO has not given any directive to these state enterprises, right, to make any offer, then we are unless something drastic happens, you just have to wait.
When you say something drastic, what do you mean?
Well, when I say drastic, it means that somebody decides today to let us look at MTS as a particular company that we should engage in outside of what is already going on in the other sector, which is they're dealing with police and fire and all of them, right? They have not gotten to the state sector, right? To the state enterprises as yet. But the officers are very discomforted. They are very, very, very discomforted. I want the people to know that they are dealing with some very demotivated officers, some very demotivated people who are finding it extremely difficult in this time where inflation and all the gas prices and the groceries and gas and everything has gone up. So the transport to get to work and send their children to school and to be able to put food on the table, right? is severely challenged. Working for $17.50 per hour, right, does not cut it. And especially as a seed enterprise, it is very, very alarming, right, that this has continued to be the thing for how much years?
Yeah,
they are just over, they're always just over minimum wage, right? Now, what happened in 2018 when the government raised the minimum wage from $15.93 to $17, for $15, in fact, to $17.50, right? Everybody went to $17.50, but there were no negotiations in between that, right, from 2019 to now.
Yeah, but you said a moment ago that inside of that there is one major company in the security sector that seeks to want to dominate what happens in terms of turbulent
Yes, and that happens. So I'll be very vocal and very open about it, because that is something that we see as a serious threat to the entire industry. You cannot have an industry such as the security industry, private security industry, where basically you have a monopoly on that. In 2018, this administration that I lead, we came into office in 2018, and in 2019, a story we were interviewed by Anna Ramdas, and a story that appeared in the papers is this company getting too large, too powerful. Because when you look at all these state enterprises, they seem to have a monopoly on contracts. So they are down in Petrotrin, the ex-Petrotrin in Heritage. They are on the Port Authority, they are on the Deco, they were on the vessels on the Port Authority, they were one time down on the CDA. You know, everywhere that the state has a major contract, that they find amalgamated security is ultimately the person who are chosen. And we are saying that when they go to the extent where they will have bought the price within the state sector down to $24, then there are very, very few, if any, companies that can compete with that. So right after they did that, they found that that there was a retrenchment of officers, in-house officers, being those officers who were employed by TSCT. So right after they bought the price down to $24, they sent home the officers who were employed by TSCT that were working for very good salaries. So we're asking the question now, right, whether or not that was known to them, that this was going to happen. And that is why somebody decided, well, I am going to play the long game, right, and go down to this, which is in our jurisdiction. We don't know of any laws which they bars them from doing that. But it sends a signal, a very, very uncomfortable signal to us, and it should be to everybody else who are conscious of what is happening in this country, that these things are happening.
Yeah, you say that you're asking the question, but that's kind of, would you say that's kind of rhetorical, because the sense is that you feel that was the case, that they had inside knowledge.
Yeah, it seems so. It will seem to anybody looking at what is happening that was the case. You know, so we would want to know if that contract will stay at $24. Could it be? Could it be then that after that will happen, of course, the price will go up? Because those officers are now charged with the cable cut, which is the contract to look after all the cables that are cut, right? They have large areas, huge areas to cover, right? Which are nearly impossible in the scenario, right? And that contract, no business can continue when you're starting at $1 under what it is your cost is.
Yeah, and the other point, you think something is wrong with the ethics of the fact that one company dominates the work in the state sector?
It is a dangerous thing. No monopoly on any level is never ever something that any country or anybody should encourage. So if you have a company actually making that sort of play and saying, listen, I want to be the supreme, right, the supreme guardian, and basically who will prosper from that? When that same company, right, that same company will charge the officers who are driving their vehicles in the execution of their duties $50 a month to come towards whether if they get in an accident, right? When you have that same company, $20 per month as you sign on as a security officer in that company, you have to pay this $20 per month for a sports club, which is basically non-existent, right? So when you look at all of that, they charge you $50 for a job letter, right? And these things were borne out in a newspaper article, right, written by I think it's Camille Hunt, right, where she interviewed myself and Mr. Aboud, and he admitted, yes, that they pay $50 a month towards the for a job letter. And he said it's to try and stop them from taking loans which they can't handle. But if you're paying people $20 an hour, such and working them under such conditions, then you're always taking back something from them. So every month that you work, this $20, which represents an hour of pay, is taken back from you for a benefit that you don't really enjoy.
You're saying that if workers want a job letter from the company, they have to pay $50 for that?
Yeah, they have to pay $50 for that. And if you are banking with, if their bank is Royal Bank, and you are banking with the public bank, you have to pay, I think it's $20 to have that money sent to your bank. So they have found very creative ways, very creative ways of actually feeding off the salaries of the officers. So really and truly, when you look at it from a accounting point of view, you're actually not working with $20 an hour, right?
All right.
And really, you understand. So and that is what it is. So those are business practices. Those are not subject to our they are not contained in contracts. In the because the association does have an agreement with the company, but those things aren't covered. Those things are basically business practices. They are free as a policy, until somebody decides to challenge it. And we've been asking people to come forward with grievances so that we can challenge it in the courts. But they are very fearful.
All right, but certainly, and that is understandable. But Mr. Richardson, thank you very much. We're going to have to leave it there again. But again, there are more questions and answers, and there's more to be gone into here. We will see what happens as we go forward. But thank you very much.
Okay, no problem, Andy. Thank you.
All right. Well, that will do it for us for this morning, for today, and therefore for this week. We thank you for watching. We tell you you can send your stuff to us here at WESN.com. We are available on all the social media platforms. You can send your emails to amprime@wesn.com. We want to tell you that, well, in half an hour, there's news at the top of the hour, followed by today's edition of Talking Point with Shah and Small. But I'll be back at 10 with today's edition, this week's edition of 10 Questions. My guest, Patriot Fudi Ferreira. And he's asking some questions of the THA Chief Secretary. He says that he is proposing what he calls a pie in the sky. We'll get to that when we get there. But for now, thanks for watching. We'll see you around.
WESN.
Get ready for an explosion of music an August evening at La Jolla Auditorium, featuring Leandra, Tricanal, David Baru and Marva, Nathaniel, and from Tobago, John Arnold and Lynette Lewis. August 20th, $250. La Jolla Auditorium from 6 p.m. For more info, call 747-4289 or 262-2584.
The Mary Immaculate Prayer Group and Friends presents its prayer breakfast on August 31st in aid of Monsignor Christian Pereira. The prayer breakfast begins from 9 a.m. at the Cathedral of Immaculate Conception. Cost is only $200. Come support the Cup of Gratitude in aid of Monsignor Pereira, August 31st.
Tickets are available at the Parish Office of the Cathedral of Immaculate Conception and the Parish of Our Lady of Perpetual Help.
I'm Sean Michael Small, and we are WESN, the Content Capital.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the content capital.
I'm Keaton Shaw, and we are WESN, the content capital.
I'm Andy Johnson, and you're watching WESN, the content capital. The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war and the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
I am Kemuel Pascal, and we are WESN, Content Capital.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
People get confused, they go into the grocery and they're like, you know what, I want to change my life. I want to eat better.
As exciting as the front of a label looks, the back of the label is really where it's at. If something has less than 5% in that particular serving of that nutrient, then it's probably a low source. If it has 20 or more, then it's a high source.
Smoothies, I'm not really into that because the texture, or I don't like what people put in theirs, but the good thing about a smoothie is that you can make it your own. You can literally put whatever you want. If you really like bananas, you can put bananas. If you really don't like bananas, don't put bananas. Like, it's really that simple.
What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
I am Rondell Donowa, and you are watching WESN, the Content Capital. People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit
what is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive, it is not rehabilitative.
We the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole, is for all of us in public.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Site, Thursdays at 11 a.m. Only on WESN, Content Capital.
I'm Andre L. Batiste, and you're watching WESN, the Content Capital. Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andre.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
We are WESN, the premier platform for Caribbean content. WESN, covering West, East, South, and North. WESN, we entertainment, sports, and news. WESN, available on Greendot 7, Amplia 118, Airlink 17, Bmobile 107, Digicel 21, ICNTT 105, and Flow 110. Connect with us at WESNCC or stream online at www.wesncc.com. WESN, your premier platform for Caribbean content.
Benedict was just saying, there is horrific figures being bantered about how much people are going to have to pay for fuel over the winter. For example, here in France, since last November, there's been a 4% cap on gas prices. And electricity, which is produced for the great part in France, is nuclear electricity. So France is less affected. That's not the case in the United Kingdom. And the caps there that have been put on fuel are not enough to prevent these huge bills from coming forward. And we have Ofgem, the energy regulator, which is set to announce a price cap on the 26th of August, which is already believed to be about £3,582, which is far more than £1,000 or so that people were used to paying, and that could go up to £4,266. Those are the predictions for the price bills that people are going to be paying after the winter in the early part of next year. So there is an awful lot of fear that these prices are out of control, like inflation out of control at 10.1% at the moment and rising, the worst figure since 1982. So the options for the two candidates, Rishi Sunak on the one side, who's the underdog, he's on 32% of intentions to vote by Conservative Party members, and Liz Truss, who's on 66%, are that either you raise or you maintain the tax rate in a bid to try to bring down inflation. That is what Rishi Sunak is saying we can't cut taxes. It would be a foolish thing to do. We have to keep the economy and bail it out and get inflation under control. Or Liz Truss saying, no, we must cut taxes. We need to give people back money to bring down a tax on everyday goods so they have more money to spend and they'll be able to better spend their money on paying for their fuel bills. Neither of those solutions is ideal. And on top of that, then there are the growing calls for the government to do something quickly. And why hasn't it done something already? The reply from the Conservatives is, well, we can't do anything until the new Prime Minister takes office early in September. So there is a waiting game taking place, and I think growing frustration. That explains in part why there are so many strikes and so much solidarity amongst the general public for the strikers.
Philip, thank you very much for that. Philip Tilda. Now, violent storms have claimed the lives of 5 people on the French island of Corsica. France's Interior Minister travelled to the island to assess the damage on Thursday, but the Met Department are warning of more extreme weather conditions today.
What's usually a popular campsite buzzing with summer revelers, now a symbol of the brutal storms that swept through the French island of Corsica. Intense rain and tropical storm-grade winds ripped through the island paradise on Thursday, uprooting trees and wrecking campsites. On a visit to one of the affected sites, the French Interior Minister vowed assistance to those affected.
I want to say to Corsica, to the families, and in particular to the families of tourists who have died or were seriously injured, that the state expresses its support and compassion. Since this morning, the government and local officials have been working to save, to rescue, and as I speak, to assess this terrible weather incident.
The violent storms, unprecedented on the island, produced winds of up to 224 kilometers per hour, leaving at least 5 dead, dozens injured, and tens of thousands without power. Meanwhile, over 5,000 people were evacuated from the island's campsites, with hundreds of tourists forced to spend the night in makeshift shelters.
We had just arrived at the camp since we landed at Calvi mid-afternoon, even though the worst was over. As soon as we arrived, we were told that we had to prepare the minimum necessary to be able to evacuate in the evening.
With the weather predicted to improve, local authorities say they expect vacationers to be able to return to their campsites later Friday.
Authorities in Germany are warning of heavy rainfall in the south of the country. Rescue services have been placed on high alert. 2 people died in the Italian region of Tuscany, and deaths were also reported due to bad weather in Austria. Yinka Oyotade reports.
Roads transformed into streams in the Italian town of Lavagna as a violent storm and winds up to 120 kilometers an hour pummeled parts of the country. The storm's fury was all too clear in the region of Tuscany, where parts of roofs were snatched off and fences brought down. Authorities are also taking stock of the damage left by deadly thunderstorms that hit parts of Austria. The southern region of Carinthia is one of the worst hit. There, wind gusts reaching up to 130 kilometers per hour toppled everything in its path.
3 enormous trees came down, one on the roof of the house, another on the car parked in front, and the third was uprooted and fell in the kindergarten.
Sunny skies turned grey and cloudy at the Frequency Music Festival in St. Pölten. Heavy downfall brought the event to a halt for a few hours on Thursday, while thousands of festival goers were forced to evacuate. Across the border in Slovenia, nothing was safe as hurricane-force winds lashed through Kran. The city's deputy mayor, Janez Černej, says around 45 buildings have been left damaged.
In other news, the wildfires in northern Algeria have been brought under control. 38 people died in the blazes, including 12 who were trapped inside a bus. Authorities have been accused of being ill-prepared, with few firefighting aircraft available despite record casualties in fires last year. The man accused of stabbing Salman Rushdie has pleaded not guilty, the judge in the case ordering the 24-year-old to remain in custody without bail. Salman Rushdie was repeatedly stabbed at a literary event last Friday. While the author has been taken off the ventilator, he remains in serious condition.
Dressed in a black and white uniform, 24-year-old Hadi Matar stayed quiet as he appeared in court on Thursday, again pleading not guilty. Speaking outside the court, District Attorney Jason Schmidt gave an update about where the case stands.
So the way the hate crime statute works in New York State is it serves as an enhancement device so that, let's say a B-level felony can now go up a step. So we're looking at that. We chose not to indict it for reasons that, it's important to us to go with where the facts meet the law, and that's our, decision for now.
Rushdie was attacked while on stage at a literary event in New York State last Friday, sustaining severe injuries. Matar was arrested at the scene. On Wednesday, he told the New York Post that he did not like Rushdie, who he said had attacked Islam, all the while admitting that he'd only read 2 pages of Rushdie's controversial novel, The Satanic Verses. He also expressed surprise that Rushdie had survived the attack. Commenting on the interview, District Attorney Schmidt said it could be used in the case. Hadi Matar's lawyer, meanwhile, asked the judge to do something to stop reporters from trying to contact his client. Outside the courtroom, he rebuked a crowd of journalists.
Again, the order from Judge Foley today was not to talk about any of the particulars about this case. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to discuss it. So you heard my arguments in court. I'm not making any additional comments at this time.
Matar was born and raised in the U.S., but his family roots. He is next scheduled to appear in court in September.
Canada is implementing a temporary ban on the imports of handguns. The measure is unprecedented and authorities say it will help put a stop to violent street crime. But critics argue the focus on limiting handgun ownership unfairly targets law-abiding owners while doing little to stamp out the real problem, which is the illegal smuggling from across the border. Joanne Profeta reports.
This is the ammunition that we sell.
Nova Scotia is the province where gun sales have increased the most in the past few years. But Alex Finnegan fears the booming industry has hit a crossroads. The government has imposed a freeze on the import of handguns, and he believes it goes too far.
It's like just one more cut in the death of 1,000 cuts. Sooner or later, the beast dies. People are afraid to purchase new firearms because they don't know if the law is going to change next week.
The restriction is temporary, but Canada's Prime Minister says he wants to pass a nationwide freeze on the purchase, sale, and import of handguns.
Nothing can bring back Alfred Wong, who was caught in the crossfire of a gunfight in Vancouver when he was only 15. As a government, as a society, we have a responsibility to act to prevent more tragedies.
Many Canadians support Law C-21, but some argue the law misses the mark. According to Toronto police, 8 out of 10 guns used in crimes were obtained in the black market.
You can take apart the sides of a car, of any vehicle, and insert packages. Obviously, you can transport drugs, but people also transport guns using this method.
Officials say guns cross the American border into Canada on the daily.
The government needs to reinforce border control to slow down or ideally stop the entry of firearms, which end up on the streets of Canada's big cities.
Canada's Ministry of Public Safety is investing an additional $250 million until 2026 to fight gun violence and trafficking.
Now, for months, the French capital has been bustling with tourists. This as travel returns to normal. But the resurgence of visitors has meant tourists in Paris have become a key target for some tuk-tuk drivers. Some are even demanding the customers pay $160 an hour.
They've become a common mode of transport for tourists wanting to get around in Paris. But many of these tuk-tuks are operating in the French capital illegally. With the help of a hidden camera, it's clear how easily drivers can scam potential passengers.
Pour les Champs-Élysées, c'est
Ouais. C'est combien?
C'est combien?
25. 25? 25, okay.
The driver asks them for 25 euros for a 10-minute ride. His tuk-tuk doesn't have a number plate, and on board, there are no seat belts. At the end of the journey, the passengers get a bad surprise.
Et vous doit 25 euros, c'est ça?
25 euros per inch.
The fare has suddenly doubled.
You do 50.
Ah oui, c'est plus cher que ce qu'on pensait.
It's practices like this that has left some suspicious of tuk-tuks.
You're a bit sceptical about getting on one because we heard that there were lots of fake ones, so we've been avoiding them, to be honest.
While some are fraudulent, others are doing their best to stay on the right side of the law. This driver offers trips at fixed rates and has the right paperwork.
This one is for my number plate. This is professional insurance that cost me 135 each month, and that's my permit.
This driver says the scams are leaving a stain on the profession.
It makes us lose customers. It gives our job a bad image and our city a bad image.
The police are keeping a close eye on the tuk-tuks in a bid to put an end to the scams. In 2 months, they've recorded 140 offences.
We can make arrests for a variety of reasons, some connected to traffic laws, others to illegal employment, especially in the taxi industry.
The city's authorities are racing to put an end to the illegal tuk-tuks before the start of the 2024 Olympics.
That's it from me. Thank you very much for watching.